Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise, glory, and honors to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakah HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations unto the elect of the nation of Israel. This is your brother Ayash Kabar from the GMS Virginia camp, coming at you with another lesson that I pray that you find edifying through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai. And this is just a quick hit before I head into the plantation. I want to say it was last night. I was doing what I do at the plantation, and I happened to walk past this Jake woman, and you got to keep in mind, this is the woman or type of woman that has a face mask on her face all year round. She's never taken it off for as long as I've known her, and for as long as I've seen her. She's always had a face mask on. Let's put it this way, I don't know what the bottom half of her face looks like. I know what her eyes look like, but I have no idea what the bottom half of her face looks like. But nonetheless, that's just to put context into what I'm saying. So a few years ago, I walked past her, and I walk past people all the time, and they say hi, what's up, this, that, or whatever. And I do the same thing too. But in this one in particular case, I walked past her last night, and she started talking, and I said, huh? And she said, do you see what Trump is doing? I said, yeah. And she looked at me and said, you called it. You called it. And I said, oh, okay, all right. So I just kept walking. Well, what she doesn't understand is I didn't call it. Yahweh Bashim Yahushai called it. We just published it. I just published it. Because it was at a time where, in my walk, where if the conversation led that way, the conversation led that way. In other words, it was at a point in time in my walk in this ministry or in this truth where if a person spoke an inkling of truth, then I would expound on my 2 cents scripturally, but without telling them it's scriptural, if that makes any sense. But nonetheless, I kind of refrain from doing that a lot because we're in a time where the information that you put out could have you thrown into jail here real soon. Nonetheless, this devil's got our videos. He's got everything about him. This devil's got a dossier on everybody who's been out there on the highways and byways teaching, preaching, and warning the people. So that is what it is. But nonetheless, I pulled back from holding deep conversations with people. Specifically, I've never really held a deep conversation with a woman, but I have let certain women know, hey, get in order, do the right thing, this, that, or the other. So that's neither here nor there, but the topic of this lesson is primarily now and all of a sudden you want to pay attention to what's going on when you've been warned about what would happen years ago. And that goes into all you Jakes who have actually walked past the prophets. You scoffed at them, and a lot of you have actually sat there and listened, but you did nothing after you've heard the word. So that's primarily the direction, I'm taking this little quick hit, because I told this woman a few years ago what was going to happen today through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, and yet she did absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, if I could recollect, she was not hearing it the way a person will soon want to hear it once, the famine of the word hits. So I got a few precepts I'm going to bring out, and, close out on that. The book of Ezekiel, chapter 33 and verse 30. Also, thou son of man, the children of thy people still are talking against thee by the walls and in the doors of the houses, and speak one to another, every one to his brother, saying, Come, I pray you, and hear what is the word that cometh forth from Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. So yeah, you know, when a lot of people heard of the Israelites, you know what I'm saying, they probably sat back and say, you know what, let's go over there and, you know, let's see what they're talking about. You know what I'm saying? Let's hear them out. You know what I'm saying? And they come unto thee as the people cometh and say, Salah, and they sit before thee as my people, and they hear thy words, but they will not do them. Yeah, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to Jake about, you know, like the scriptures and prophecies, and Jake will sit there as if he's like all ears, but you know, he's blinded. You know what I'm saying? They'll sit and they'll listen out of respect, out of so-called respect, but you know, it doesn't soak in. You know, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai hasn't given them the increase. You know, so a lot of them who have actually heard the word, it was just that. They just heard it, you know. They did nothing in their lives to apply themselves to the work, to the words of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. You know, they have no righteous works. They got works of evil, but they have no righteous works, you know. Because they heard what was required of them, and they did nothing. You know, so that's why in the time of Jacob's trouble to come, a lot of these Jakes ain't gonna have no, they ain't gonna have no hedge about them. Especially these women, especially the woman that stopped me last night and said, everything you said is happening. You called it. No, I didn't call it. Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai called it. You know, and a lot more is gonna come to her attention once shit really starts kicking off and martial law takes place, and you know, these Gurga troops just go for fucking broke. They're not gonna give a fuck about you called it. They're not gonna give a fuck about the person who have heard the word and did nothing, you know, to build up their works. You know, they're not gonna give a fuck. Why? Because they hadn't sought after Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. You know, it's almost a certainty that most people who have heard the names Yahweh Wa Yahushai can't repeat them today. And that's all we here at GMS promotes. Yahweh Wa Yahushai. And of course those affiliate camps. But the most part, you know, you really don't hear the words of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. Now, don't get me wrong, you do have those camps that actually use the correct names, but they're off in their doctrine a little bit. But then again, you got those camps that don't use the name whatsoever, and their entire doctrine is off. So, I mean, yeah, you know, a lot of Jakes are coming, they'll sit and they'll listen, but that's all it is. It's just ear service. You know, they look at what we're doing out there on the highway, or they looked at what we were doing out there on the highways and byways as entertainment. Well, that entertainment is starting to become a realistic thing with Jake. They're starting to say, well, whoa, hold on. They said that this was going to happen, and it's happening. They said that was going to happen, and it happened. They said that this was going to happen, and it happened. And now they're saying that this is about to happen, and we are starting to see the fruits of it happening. You know? Our apostles have said for decades that the MOTB is the RFID microchip. And guess what? It's in the news, and it's happening. It's right here, right before your face. But you Jakes, you listen, but you don't do the work. You know? Anyhow, Jake is in for it. For with their mouth they show much love, but their heart goeth after their covetousness. Yeah, you know, Jake can hear the word and say, yo, yeah, yop, 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 yop. You right about that. Yop, yop, yop. Oh, I see that. Yop, yop, yop. That shit's fucking with my check too. Yop, yop, yop. There's a lot of yops with Jakes. You know, and and they sound good. Yeah, all right, you know what I'm saying? I'll be back next week. Peace. But you never see him again. You know, you don't even hear from him ever again. Now you have those chosen few that will actually return week after week, you know, to be a part of the camp. But for the most part, a lot of Jakes don't even show back up. For with their mouth, they show much love. Yeah, all right, yo, bros, what you did is good. You should take that shit to the hood. No. You know, how about Shimmy Al-Shah said, go out on the chief place of concourse, you know, and bid them to the supper, you know. Yahweh Shimmy Al-Shah say, all right, I want you to go to the ghetto, stand right there in the middle of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X Boulevard, because you know that's where most ghetto roads cross. Martin Luther King Boulevard and Malcolm X Avenue or what the fuck ever. And I want you to stand right there and preach to these niggas that are doing all types of abominable shit before my eyes. Preach to them niggas. You know? But no, Yahweh Shimmy Al-Shah didn't say that. He said, go out in the chief place of concourse. The place where there's a lot of traffic, a lot of foot traffic. You know? And if you hear this word and it resonates with you, beautiful. Then do what you gotta do. You know? But their heart goeth after their covetousness. Yeah, you know, after you've done said your good shit, you know, just to get away, you know, you go and you do your abominations. You might actually go and smoke your weed and, you know, eat your pork chop sandwich and your crab and lobster salad. You know, you Jakes might actually go out and stroke another man's wife. So the words of Yahweh Shimmy Al-Shah really hasn't sunk in with you, you know, until you start to see shit happening around you where you actually would start to, yo, hold the fuck up. Hold on. What do we have here? But don't worry. Anyhow, the book of Ezekiel 33, jumping down to verse 32. And lo, thou art unto them as a very lovely song of one that has a pleasant voice and can play well with an instrument. For they hear thy words, but do not do them. Yo, bro, what you said was on point. I'm actually going through that shit now with this demon I'm fucking with, bro. Yo, what you said was on point. Now I'm going through this shit at my job. Yo, what you said was on point, because now I can understand why I kept getting my ass whooped for no reason. Yo, what you're saying is on point, because there's a lot of excuses with Jakes. There's a lot of fucking excuses with Jakes. Yo, I see what you're saying, bro. Yo, I'm with you on that. Yo, I'm gonna get with this. I'm gonna get with what you going into right now when I come back. But where you going? Yo, I gotta go get locked up. You know what I'm saying? I gotta go turn myself in. You know, I did some, you know, abominable shit. And you never hear from him again. Or, yo, I hear what you're saying, but I gotta go. Or somebody's pulling them away. Whatever the situation is, it's sweet to them when they're hearing it, because they need to hear something positive. You're an Israelite, it's a very positive thing. To hear that Yahweh Shimmy Al-Shah is only for the nation of Israel is a very powerful thing. To hear that the people who have been oppressing you will soon be oppressed by you forever is a very powerful thing. To hear that your entire history is in the scriptures is a very powerful thing. And that sounds beautiful to you, Jakes. Until you start to hear, well, now that you heard it, each one teach one type. Well, I ain't gonna use that one. Now that you heard it, Go out there to highways and byways and spread the word. Go out there and preach. Go out there and proclaim it to the nations. Their judgment. Proclaiming to you wicked jakes their judgment. But a lot of you jakes will sit back on your fucking armchairs after you've heard the good word and did nothing. You know, you've actually said beautiful things after you've heard the word, but go out there and do nothing. So you heard the song, you know, you heard the song, you heard the melody, you know, you were there when the prophets were playing, you know, and you actually stood there and tapped your toes to it. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. And you did nothing. Jumping down to verse 33, Ezekiel 33 and 33. And when this cometh to pass, and lo, it will come, then they shall know that a prophet has been among them. That woman who said to me yesterday, you called it, has no idea that a prophet has been among her. To her, I was probably a one-off. I don't know. But it's going to get to the point where a lot of these people, brothers, that we teach, that we have warned, especially your family members and your close friends that you grew up with type shit, a lot of them are going to be like, yo, what the fuck? What the fuck? Where's Mike at? We need to go get Mike. Well, I don't know Mike by Mike. I know Mike by his Hebrew name. You know, Yahweh Shem Yahushua knows Mike, but he also knows him by his Hebrew name. You Jakes are going to be lost in the source looking for Mike. If you can understand that. Anyhow. Yeah. The book of Matthew, chapter 11 and verse 16. But whereunto shall I liken this generation? Is like unto the children sitting in the markets and calling unto their fellows. Yo, Leroy! Yo, what's up? Yo, what we doing tonight? I'll be there. I did that shit when I was in the world. So I know. I stood on the corners when I was in the world. So I know. You know? I called to my fellows. Hey, yo, what's going on, bro? You good? You good? Yeah, all right, man. You know, I'm good. Well, not bro, but bro. What's going on, bro? Yeah, you know, you good? All right, you know. Hit me up later. All right, bet. Only to do some wickedness when I was in the world. Well, Jake has never gotten out of that. Matthew 11 and jumping down to verse 17. And saying, we have piped unto you, and ye have not danced. We have mourned unto you, and ye have not lamented. Yeah, okay, a lot of you Jakes who have actually heard this song, it did absolutely nothing for you. You didn't lament. You didn't dance. You didn't do any of these things. You didn't seek Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua before the evil days drew nigh. You did none of those things. But instead, you stood on that fucking street corner calling your fellows. You know, you stood in front of the prophets wanting to hear the word, but you don't do them. But don't worry. Don't worry. Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua got something for your ass. You know? The book of Matthew 11 and verse 18. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he has a devil. Well, the servant is not greater than his master. Now granted, John was not our master, but let me just get it. Matthew 11 and 19. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, behold, a man gluttonous and a winebibber, a friend of the publicans and sinners, but wisdom is justified of her children. So if they did the same thing to Yahushua, they're gonna do the same thing to us. If they persecuted him, they're gonna persecute us. That's why I said the servant is not greater than his master. We're going to go through the same thing. Yeah, okay, a lot of people are starting to wake up and see that the prophets of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua has been right all along through the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, because it is no strength of our own. It is no strength of our own. All of it is of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. Every single ounce of it. We can't claim a tittle of it to say that it is out of our strength. Every ounce of it is of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. And whatever we do, whatever we think, wherever we go, it is of the will of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. You know? So if they said these things about Yahushua when, you know, he walked on the earth, they're going to say the same shit about us. In fact, they're saying the same shit about us. But the difference is a lot of people starting to realize that, hold on a second, what we were saying has truth to it. That girl that said that to me yesterday, that's just the beginning of the people approaching the prophets and looking for the prophets. Because more and more is going to start to show its fruit, you know? More and more shit's going to happen, and more people are going to be looking for the prophets. They should run to and fro and shall not find wisdom. She'll hide itself. Because it's going to get that bad. You know? I'll end up on this. The book of Ezekiel, chapter 3 and verse 17, because this is what we were commanded to do. I was commanded when I came into the truth to do this, and through the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, I pray I continue to do it. You know? Until the Lord delivers his elect, as I pray that I am one of those men. The book of Ezekiel, chapter 3 and 17. Son of man, I have made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore, hear the word at my mouth and give them warning from me. We have been giving you, Jakes, warning after 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 warning for decades that this day will come. We have been warning you that this time is upon you. We have been I can only speak for myself in terms of how I've been warning Jakes. And you can watch the videos of the other brothers on how they've been warning Jakes. But nonetheless, the doctrine has still been the same. That Yahweh Hashem Yahushua has made watchmen to do their jobs. To stand up there on that tower and look out to see the danger, warn the people of the danger, and blow the horn that the danger is coming. Our apostles have been doing this for decades. Our bishops have been doing this for decades. Our elders have been doing this for decades. You know, and you have men who have been in camps doing this for years and decades. The doors of mercy is closing on you, Jakes. And there's nothing that you can do about it once it closes. So now is the time to get this word, while Yahweh Hashem Yahushua has his hand stretched out still by having his prophets out there on the highways and byways. You can't tell me that the Lord ain't merciful, man. There's nowhere in the world anyone can sit there and tell me that Yahweh Hashem Yahushua is not merciful. By still allowing his prophets to go out there week in and week out and warn you wicked mother. That's mercy. But a lot of you Jakes don't listen. And I'm pretty sure other people are going to approach other brothers and say, hey, man, you called that. Hey, man, you were right. Amen this. Amen that. everything but calling upon Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. So, with that, I'd like to give all praise, glory, and honors to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rechacha Chodash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations unto the elect of the nation of Israel. Shalom. Where you at? There you go.